Hello aspirants, today we are going to talk about disaster management. Disaster management forms GS3 part of your syllabus. It comes under GS3 mains syllabus. So it is very important when we look at the questions that have been asked over the years. In the last, since 2013 when the syllabus has changed, we see at least 1 to 2 questions that regularly appear in every year question paper of the main. So that is why this is a very important topic. Disaster management, here again, if you are reading disaster management, you will be able to cover topics related to your geography. You can cover related to your biodiversity. Fine. You can also read about some form of acts that have been passed that can help while writing polity answers, as well as while writing environment, biodiversity, climate change, and all these related essays. Fine. So that is why this is a very important topic, and this syllabus of disaster management you can easily cover in 5 to 6 days. Okay, and one day you can keep it for answer writing. That is how you can practice this. So let us dive into it. Firstly, when we look at the syllabus, under your syllabus that has been given by the UPSC, only one line is mentioned, that is disaster and disaster management. Okay, so there is it is not elaborately defined as any other syllabus that you find. So here disaster management, only this thing is given. So how we can decipher the syllabus easily? You have to look at the syllabus, okay, and you have to cross refer it with the previous year question paper. Okay, if you are not able to do it from 2013, if you can cover previous year question paper up to 5 to 6 years, that is also well and good. Okay, the questions keep repeating, not much has changed in this subject here. So questions keep on repeating, and you can easily get a grasp as to what is the pattern, on which pattern the UPSC is asking questions here related to disaster management. Then see, disaster management, when you're studying it, disaster management is divided into two parts. That is, firstly, it is related to your geography. Here you have to read about various type of disasters, which type of disasters are there. Before that, you have to read about the hazards, vulnerability, risk. Okay, and the new term, that is DRR, that is disaster risk reduction. Fine, these are all the things that you have to read under your geography. Then when it comes to governance, okay, governance, we have different types of international frameworks. Okay, international frameworks we have, like the Sendai, Hugo. Then you have UN as well. Okay, UNDRR, which we will be reading later on. We have a disaster management act that has been passed in India in 2005. Okay, so here disaster management is the combination of two important themes, that is geography, that is under geography there are various changes happening, and there are cause and effects of hazard and disaster. And then it is about the governance, as to how this disaster can be mitigated, how after the post disaster what measures have to be taken, and who are responsible. All this is mentioned under your governance section here. So this is how you have to read it. Again, when we come to geography part, under geography part you have to read these basic concepts, that is various type of disasters. Remember, there are two types of disasters, natural and anthropogenic. Okay, natural and anthropogenic. Then you have hazards here. Okay, hazards and all definitions you have to read. What are the effects of hazards? What are vulnerabilities? So how you are going to read about vulnerabilities? So we have something called as a vulnerability profile of India. So this is one of the atlas that was published by BMTPC. So here is your vulnerability atlas. Okay, so here we have earthquake hazard maps, then we have landslide prone areas. So all this you have to cover under the vulnerability. Then resilience. Okay, how different areas have built resilience. Like if you consider mangroves are very important when we have tsunamis and floods. Why? Because the strong roots, they act as a bank. Okay, so different types of resilience based on different types of areas and landforms, that is very important. And lastly is disaster risk reduction, how the disasters can be reduced. Okay, these are all the basic concepts that you have to read. Mainly are all answers, if the questions have been asked, they revolve around these 5 themes only. So basic understanding and basic concepts clearance of these 5 topics are very, very important. Then type of disasters I've told. There are 2 types of disasters, that is natural and anthropogenic. Fine. There are 2 types. If you want, there is another type of disaster called as technological disaster. Artificial intelligence is a hazard. Fine. It is a hazard, but if it is not used properly, it becomes a disaster here. Okay. So these are some of the technological disasters that can happen. Then another one is your hacking. Okay, because of hacking, there is a loss of economic loss, political instability, and all happens. So this is another technological disaster you can consider. Then vulnerability profile, I've explained in brief previously that under it you have to read all these type of maps and locate the areas which are prone to different types of disasters. Then sorry about this. So here is governance. So when it comes to governance, it is mainly based on disaster risk management cycle. This was framed by UN. Okay, then you have the UN conventions like the Sendai framework and all, UN conventions on DRR, that is disaster risk reduction. Okay, all this you have to read here. You also have UNISDR. All these are related conventions which we'll be doing when we are covering the governance here. Then is your international framework. As I mentioned, 3 frameworks are there: Yokohama, then Sendai, then Hugo. Sendai is the latest one. Okay, now we are following the framework of Sendai, like how under Paris conference various targets are given to different countries. Similarly, when a country is preparing for disaster or after disaster, pre-disasters, if there is any framework that has to be followed, it is followed under the Sendai framework. Then disaster management in India, as I've told, you have 3 tier disaster management. Okay, that is at top you have the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, then you have the SDMA, State Disaster Management Authority, and at the local level as well. Okay, there are different responsibilities given to the local governments, local administration, like your DC and all. Fine, all this comes under your Disaster Management Act of 2005. So all these things you have to read. You have to read what is the role of NDRF, what is the role of Ministry of Defense. Does Ministry of Defense has any role in your disaster management? Then you have Ministry of Home Affairs as well, okay, who perform different functions. So all this you get to read under governance section here. Okay, so yeah, so Yokohama, these are the 3, Hugo, as well as the Sendai. These are the 3 principles which you will be reading later on in the classes. Then you have the 2005 Act here, Disaster Management Act. This overall governs the national disaster management structure. Under it, as I've mentioned, there are 3 tier. Okay. Then one more area which many don't read or ignore is your case study. Okay. Case study, I mean that, see, once we had floods in Chennai, and then UPSC asked about urban floods. Okay, so you have to be aware of all the, disasters are reckoning, and now with climate change and all, disasters will be very frequent. Okay, so this is one area of the syllabus where many don't concentrate, but don't realize the potential as well, because here if you are reading for disaster management, as I've told, it helps you immensely when you're writing essays as well. Look at the essays that come nowadays. They are related to some or the other disaster or climate change or ecological themes only. Right. So one of the essays I think you can easily cover if you are covering this, covering the disaster management subject here. Then see, look at this question. One of the question that that was asked in 2019 means, here the question is asking about vulnerability is an essential element for defining disaster impact and its threat to people. How and in what ways can vulnerability to disaster be characterized? Discuss different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. See, again, the question is very simple. It revolves around the topic of vulnerability. So if you're writing answers, and if you have heard me before, so I've told that the questions, when you're writing answers, it is divided into 3 parts. That is introduction, then you have the main body, and the conclusion. So always in the introduction you have to write the definition of the question asked. Like here you can write what is vulnerability, right? So your introduction is done, you can write vulnerabilities and what vulnerability is. Then how and in what ways can vulnerability to disaster be characterized? So there are different types of vulnerability. Like you have economic vulnerability. See, for example, if you take the example of floods cause economic vulnerability because the business will be shut down. Many of the businesses will be shut down due to overflooding. There will be delay in production. Okay, so such things happen. Then you have ecological vulnerability as well. Floods destroy the soil. Okay, there is a soil erosion and all. So this also you can write. So there are different aspects that you are going to read under this topic here. Then discuss different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. Okay, so different types of disasters cause different types of vulnerability. So that is how you have to frame the answers here. So again, one more thing is that you may be thinking about what should be the source. I have already uploaded the one PDF, okay, PDF in the Telegram group, so you can refer that PDF and you can read. That is more than sufficient. Don't go on researching the subject, not at all useful. All you're going to get is 1 or 2 questions, but if you just read the basics here, you can answer those 1 or 2 questions perfectly. Okay, so that is all. We are going to start with this section here. So the next video will be about the different types of disasters. Okay, so here, as I've told, you have to cover okay, so disaster management is about 2 subjects, geography and governance. So the first video will be about geography. Okay, I'll be dealing with different types of disasters. How, if possible, I'll go into depth about how other disasters are caused and all. But the next video will be about geography section here. Okay, so that is all. See you in the next video.